Alright, I am back with another video, and today we are doing something a little bit different. If you've been around on my live streams before, you may have heard me talk about my personal favourite tabletop game system, Call of Cthulhu. I've been playing it and DMing it mostly for the better part of 2 years now, and it is my favourite tabletop system, as I said. Like, it is so fun. Me and my group of friends that we play together, we kind of prefer campaigns that are slightly set in more modern settings and are slightly more grounded in reality. We don't want to be like flinging spells all the time or going on grand adventures. We like the more self-contained mystery style things and being able to, explore and do all this sort of thing, which D&D can definitely do, but we just kind of like Call of Cthulhu more, the wider stat spread, and how it's more based on actual like roleplay and conversational skills, and as well as actual investigating, rather than just being about combat all the time. So, and in my personal, and I just kind of like the overall setting, Eldritch horror is really, really fun, but I've personally adapted campaigns to include other mythos as well, such as Japanese mythology with like yokai and such, stuff like that. It's a very malleable system, and especially if you pick up Pulp Cthulhu, if you want something a bit more action-based, you can do that as well. I personally have both the Call of Cthulhu and Pulp Cthulhu sourcebooks, and it is such a fun system. I want to do more with Call of Cthulhu in the future on this channel, but for now, a D&D build inspired by it, or I guess a Baldur's Gate 3 build, will suffice. Now, player characters in Call of Cthulhu are called Investigators, regular people who have stumbled onto some strange, mysterious, and perhaps even horrifying circumstances, and they need to solve the mystery and get to the bottom of something. It may be a kidnapped individual, a stolen artifact, something that pulls these regular, everyday individuals from different walks of life into this horrifying, dark, mysterious event. And the whole thing of Call of Cthulhu is characters are very vulnerable. Combat is actively discouraged, as most things you're just not going to be able to fight, especially if it is a monster of some kind. And eventually, the game's sanity mechanic will cause your character's mental state to degrade over time, to the point where they'll start having bouts of insanity. They may even be able to learn, like, dark magic from tomes, and eventually maybe even transform into a monster themselves, the player completely losing control of the character. And I kind of wanted to replicate that eventual progression of character degradation in Baldur's Gate 3 through an actual build, where we get more powerful over time, but lose our sense of self as well. So, I kind of wanted this build to start off as kind of being like a regular person who, because of the events of Baldur's Gate 3, the Illithid Powers and all that, they slowly start to lose their mind and go insane. So this is a dark urge build that would probably start as someone who's good aligned, but then as more bad shit keeps happening to them, they slowly turn evil or something like that, or maybe they're able to beat it at the end. I don't know. There's just a lot of cool growth for this character, and I believe this character would be as a backstory, this character would be an investigator actually as their backstory. Like, they're a detective type character who was actually probably investigating maybe the Absolute, or not that they would know it was the Absolute at the time, but, the mysterious kidnappings, the murders, the shady underbelly of Baldur's Gate, like the dealings of Gortash and Orin, stuff like that. I think he would have been looking into everything, a bit similar to that one Flaming Fist character we meet in Act 3, but eventually his investigation got him in a bit too deep, and he was kidnapped and put on the Nautiloid. And while he starts off pretty normal, he knows he's got a tadpole on his head, but he kind of is able to rationalize it and kind of keep going. I think, like I said, he would slowly degrade over time as the events of the game weigh on him, because again, this is a normal person at the end of the day. They're not an adventurer, they're not a monk, a paladin, a fighter, a bard, somebody who has access to magic. They're just a regular person who fell into some really bad circumstances, and it takes its toll. I think it's a really interesting subversion of D&D character progression, rather than the fact that the more they level up, the more they lose themselves. But I've rambled on long enough. Let's get into the build. We're going to be kicking things off as a rogue. As far as playing someone who starts off as just kind of a regular average Joe, this is about as close as we can get. We're not experts with every type of weapon, but we know enough to defend ourselves. We're not exactly proficient in, heavy armor or anything like that, but a piece of light armor will do us just fine. What we really want from rogue is the skill proficiencies to allow us to be an efficient investigator, because we are still that at the end of the day. As for our ability scores, I've gone for an 8 in strength. We don't need it, as well as the fact that, again, regular dude. He's not going to be throwing goblins around. Dexterity is at 14. I would kind of like this to be higher, but the point of this build is not to actually really use weapons that much. They're not really our forte. I want our offensive capability to come from the general corruption that we receive earlier, kind of as we progress, so that kind of dark magic aspect. Constitution is at 14. Again, we're just kind of a regular person, but our infection, our corruption, has kind of made us a bit more beefy than the average person, but we're not exactly a tank. Intelligence and wisdom are both at 12 because I wanted them to be decent, because I want us to be able to succeed on those skill checks, and charisma is at 16 because I want that to be our primary stat, and it's great for conversation. You know, you could be the face of the party and it will come up later. As for our skill proficiencies, I went with the charlatan background, just because there wasn't really like a investigative type background. I mean, there might have been something that was a bit better, but I liked the idea of the charlatan because you gain inspiration from lying, and I think the more your mental state degrades, the more deceptive you're going to be, so I felt like it actually worked out in the end. Also, it's going to give us sleight of hand and deception proficiency, which I would have wanted to pick up anyway, but now we just get it for free, so I can put those points into something else. I've gone for stealth because, again, you are going to need to hide from the big bad monsters. Investigation with expertise on that, because again, we are an investigator, we want to be able to solve mysteries. Insight is the same, we want to be able to tell when people are lying. Perception, so we can check our environment and spot hidden details, again, like it describes, makes sense for us. Deception we already get. And because we are a human, again, a regular human, the most basic person we can be because Call of Cthulhu characters are humans, I've gone with perception as our bonus proficiency here, because again, it makes sense for this character to be a little bit suave. I mean, look at him. Handsome motherfucker. Let's move on. At Rogue level 2, we get our Cunning action, allowing us to hide, dash, and disengage as a bonus action. And I think this is absolutely perfect for us. It's going to allow us to basically be able to run away and hide when we need to. Again, not being in the thick of combat, we can let the very experienced adventurers in our party, like Lae'zel, Astarion, Karlach, all of those guys, to do the main bulk of the fighting for us, while we maybe try to stay out of it to start. Again, you really kind of have to roleplay this character. At the start of the game, you're going to feel like you're not a huge part of combat, but trust me, as this build progresses and you get more into the the progression of things, it's going to feel really fun to play. Probably not an honor mode build, but tactician could definitely work. Anyways, I feel like these skills are perfectly in character, so let's keep going. At Rogue level 3, we get to choose our subclass, and I think level 3 is about the time you're going to start getting Illithid tadpoles. You will have kind of been introduced to the Dream Visitor, and as such, I think the latent psychic abilities that are going to come from being infected with the Illithid tadpole are going to start to awaken here. So I think you're going to be getting your first Illithid powers at this point, as well as your subclass, like I said. And as such, I want to pick a rather unique option. Thief would be the strongest. It would give you an extra bonus action, which you could use for Illithid powers once you get the Zayfisk ability in late Act 1, which you absolutely want. For those of you that don't know, I'll have an infographic on screen now. There is a certain event in the game where if you pass enough skill checks, all of your Illithid powers can be used as a bonus action. And as such, if you have 2 of those, you're going to be able to fire off Illithid powers left, right, and centre, so Thief would be absolutely perfect for this build, and I would personally recommend it. However, I want to subvert the expectations here slightly, and go for Arcane Trickster. Arcane Trickster is actually going to give us a very unique, I'm going to flavour it as a psychic ability that we wouldn't get anywhere else. The Mage Hand Ledger Domain. I hope I said that right. This is going to make our Mage Hand augmented. It's going to be invisible, and it doesn't have a turn limit. It stays up permanently, and because it's invisible, you can use it to scout ahead. But the thing is there's a unique interaction in combat with this thing. The Mage Hand, again being invisible so it won't get targeted, it can pick up and throw things, and dropping something from your inventory for the Mage Hand to throw on your turn costs no action. So you can basically have like an extra kind of turn to throw things at the enemy or move things around. Now, the description of this ability says that you are supposed to be able to lockpick at range and pickpocket people, but unfortunately that's not actually implemented in-game as a patch 6 hotfix 20. I'm not sure if they just kind of put the generic D&D description in there and didn't actually add the functionality, I don't know. But this thing will have a ton of usage. Again, like I say, you can scout ahead into a situation before going in to see what's coming up. And again, you can throw things around the arena, which can be quite useful. It's just a little bit of extra damage, but I kind of picture it more as like a psychic telekinesis. And I think that is actually really cool. Almost like the telekinetic feat. There is definitely some creative uses for this. Remember that you have it, and you'll have a fun time. But if you don't feel like faffing with all that extra stuff and you don't really care for the flavour of the build, go with Thief. It will be more powerful in the long run, but this is more fun, come on. You also obviously get the Mage Hand cantrip for free. As for our cantrips that we get, I don't know why I forgot what they were called then for a second. We're going to get 2, and because these use our intelligence, and again our intelligence score is a little bit on the low side, we can just pick up 2 utility cantrips here. Friends, a little bit of psychic influence to gain advantage on your charisma checks. Yes, absolutely. And minor illusion, again, another bit of psychic influence to make people think they see or hear something that's not actually there, perhaps allowing you to slip by unnoticed or distract them so you can get ready for an attack. Makes a lot of sense to me to pick these 2 up. We also get 2 spells, and unfortunately this is a bit of a tricky one. Again, all of these spells, house spells says DCs tied to our intelligence, which isn't the highest, so we might as well just pick up a couple of utility options that may be useful. Disguise Self. I don't know if I want to flavour this as you psychically manipulate someone to see you as someone else, or if this guy is just straight up so good at disguising, perhaps Sherlock Holmes style, the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes, and he could just he just pulls out a disguise kit and goes full Monty on it. I don't know, it's entirely up to you how you want to flavour that, but it is a useful spell overall to have. And we'll go with Charm Person here, just to be able to maybe potentially charm people in combat as well. Again, this is probably never ever going to go off, but hey, it does kind of fit for this build thematically. We do get a spell from the expanded spell list as well, and it's entirely up to you what you want to pick here, it really doesn't matter. My personal choice would be Shield, as it is going to give us an extra dollop of defense. Since we're only a level 3 Arcane Trickster, we only get 2 level 1 spell slots at this point, but 2 uses of Shield is better than none in my opinion. You could also pick up something like Fine Familiar if you want an animal companion, Featherfall, Longstride, or Enhanced Sleep if you want a bit more mobility. Magic Missile could also work as it never misses, so it would be a decent ranged option, but we are going to get a better one in just a second here. So my personal pick is definitely Shield for sure. At Rogue level 4 you could grab a feat if you wanted to, and an extra spell, but I think at this point you've got a few Illithid Powers, you're starting to unlock your psychic abilities with your Mage Hand. I think at this point the corruption is really starting to take hold, and our character is slowly starting to lose their sanity. So we're going to multi-class, and you probably already knew where I'm going with this. We're going Warlock, and we're going with Great Old One. The influence of a far-off being of celestial incomprehension, eldritch horror beyond anything you can imagine, has started to influence the mind of this character as they delve deeper into insanity, as they begin to uncover dark secrets from all corners of the world, the absolute, all of this sort of thing. Maybe even the Necromancy of Thay would be a really fun side quest to kind of mimic this as well, and getting a cool ability from that. All of this sort of thing is really starting to weigh on their mind, and as such they are now borrowing power from both the Illithids and something far, far more terrifying. This is going to give us a few things at level 1. We're going to get access to Mortal Reminder. Whenever we land a critical hit against a creature, that creature and any nearby enemies must succeed a wisdom save or become frightened. Not only are we fearful of what lies beyond, we spread that fear to others, which I think is great. We're also going to get 2 cantrips at this level, and we're going to be getting our main offensive option now, Eldritch Blast. Yes, this is going to be an Eldritch Blast build. I can see this guy being pinned down by some sort of awful enemy that they can't fight, maybe something like from Act 1, and they're about to die, and then all of a sudden they put their hand out and an Eldritch Blast fires out, and suddenly they are now kind of going like, oh god, what did I just do? But now they have an offensive option in Eldritch Blast, and this is where their mind is really going to start to go downhill. Maybe little bits at the start, but as they go deeper in with more Illithid Powers, it's just going to go bleh. So yes, we are building an Eldritch Blast to spellcasting Warlock here, which I think is super fun, because I don't do that often enough. Your second cantrip can be whatever you like. I'm going to pick Bone Chill, because we are going to have a bit of a necrotic theme with this build as well as we go on, so we might as well pick this up if we need an alternate source of damage, but Eldritch Blast is going to be our main damage option pretty much all the time. And of course we have 2 spells that we can pick up here from the Warlock spell list, and 2 extra ones that get added from Great Old One. But I'm going to be picking up the 2 that I think make sense for this build. Dissonant Whispers allows us to frighten a creature. They have disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls, and they cannot move, and it deals a decent chunk of psychic damage. Perfect for us. We're also going to be able to pick up Arms of Hadar, allowing us to sprout a weird black energy tentacles from our body, again very, very Eldritch, dealing necrotic damage and preventing the target from using reactions for a turn. You're probably not going to be using these too much over Eldritch Blast, but they're great for flavour and also as alternative damage options. Psychic damage is pretty nice to have, as well as necrotic, actually. At Warlock level 2, we're going to be able to pick 2 Eldritch Invocations, and of course we're going to be going with 2 very obvious and powerful ones, Agonizing Blast to add our Charisma modifier to the damage of our Eldritch Blast, and Devil's Sight to allow us to see normally in darkness. We are a human who doesn't normally have dark vision, and this will allow us to see in both magical and non-magical darkness, allowing for certain plays that I'm sure all of you are aware of. Aware of? Squirry Wabbit. Why did I say it like that? Anyways, we do get to pick up another spell at this level, and I want Tasha's Hideous Laughter because, again, we're going to drive people so mad by showing them just a little hint of Eldritch horror, a little bit of Cthulhu's visage, and it is going to drive them so mad that they start laughing uncontrollably, so Tasha's Hideous Laughter fits perfectly here. At Warlock level 3, we're going to be able to pick up a Pact Boon. Now, normally I'm like, Pact of the Blade because it's the best one, but we're not building a spell sword here, we're building a spellcaster. I want Pact of the Tome. Pact of the Tome is going to give us a couple of things. We're going to get 3 additional cantrips. Guidance, which is absolutely brilliant. A 1d4 bonus to any ability check is lovely. Vicious Mockery, another psychic damage attack. I can kind of see this guy kind of like getting like a bit of a Joker vibe to him, you know, DC's Joker, and he's kind of like, when he starts like going a little bit insane, he starts cackling and starts throwing out insults which deal psychic damage. I love it. It also gives creatures disadvantage on their next attack roll, which is nice. I just like having the spell here. And Thorn Whip. Not really on theme, but hey, it's actually kind of cool to have, so why not? We can use this to pull enemies into our Cloud of Darkness, which we're going to be making from this level. Darkness is going to allow us to create a dark shroud that heavily obscures and blinds the creatures within. Creatures cannot make ranged attacks into or out of it. Now, the thing is, this would normally blind us, but because we have Devil's Sight, we can cast darkness on ourselves. Enemies will have a really hard time hitting us because blind gives them disadvantage on their attack rolls, and the range of their spells are reduced. And again, with darkness, ranged attacks cannot go in or out, so we're not going to be shot from people outside the darkness. However, because we have Devil's Sight, we can shoot out of our darkness no problem. So, we cast darkness on ourselves, and just Eldritch Blast, pew 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 pew, as much as we like. And because Eldritch Blast is going to use our action, if we have the Zephyrisk ability to use our Illithid Powers as a bonus action, we, from our Darkness Cloud, are throwing out Psychic Blasts, Eldritch Blasts, we're doing everything. We are just this incomprehensible thing hiding in the darkness that strikes down their foes before they even know what's happened. Oh, I love it. I love how this build is coming together thematically. I think it's awesome. So yeah, pick up Darkness as early as you can. At total level 7, we are going to be a Warlock level 4, allowing us to pick our first feat. A bit late to the party on this one, I will admit. The progression of this build is a bit iffy. If you feel like you don't care about the Arcane Trickster stuff or the Thief stuff or whatever you're trying to get there, maybe you want to grab some Warlock levels first, but I feel like the way I'm doing this build progression as far as from a natural character standpoint, I kind of like it like this way, so entirely up to you. But regardless, we're still a pretty powerful character at the end of the day. The Illithid Powers really help out. We get to choose another cantrip at this level, and there's nothing here that I really want. We kind of have everything that's on theme, so I guess Blade Ward, but Poison Spray actually could also be good. I don't know, it's entirely up to you. As for our spells, we do get to pick another one, and of course I want Crown of Madness, allowing us to instill literal madness in a humanoid enemy, making them attack the creature closest to them, other than ourselves, even if it's an ally. Yep, we're literally driving our enemies mad. Makes perfect sense. We also get to choose a feat at this level, and of course we're going to be going with an ability score improvement and bumping up that charisma, more damage on our Eldritch Blasts, better persuasion, deception, and intimidation checks, all that stuff we want. We just want to pump up that charisma now, so yeah, let's keep that going. At Warlock level 5, we're going to be getting our class feature, our Deepened Pact. Because we are a Pact of the Tome Warlock, we gain 3 new spells. Animate Dead, which is great, Haste, which is awesome, and Cool Lightning, which is still pretty cool. There is a problem here though. Haste, as good as it is, uses our concentration, which we kind of want more on darkness. So it's going to be kind of down to what you actually want to do. If you feel like you need the darkness cloud to be able to keep yourself safe, again, we are a little bit squishy with this build, then you want to focus on that. But if you feel like you're in a pretty safe position and you just want to start blasting with Eldritch Blast as much as you can, then cast haste on yourself to be able to do it twice per turn. So you have a little bit of strategy with this build, a bit of, you know, flexibility in what approach you can take. We're not just going to be using the same strategy every time. If we can help it, you have a bit more to do overall. So yeah, and the fact is that haste wouldn't take a spell slot either, so if you drop concentration on darkness a couple of times, which will happen sometimes because we have a low constitution, but overall, because we're in darkness, we won't get hit that much anyway, so it kind of balances out. You can cast haste without needing a spell slot anyway, so again, you have options. That's kind of the important thing. As for our spells, we do get access to level 3 spells at this point, and of course I want Fear. Like, again, this whole build has a theme of madness and fear and all this, so getting the literal Fear spell makes sense. Targets drop everything and become fearful. They have disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls. Again, our main strategy, if we want to be offensive, is the Darkness Double Sight combo with Eldritch Blast. But if you want to be a supportive build, giving your allies a bunch of help on their stuff, which actually I would recommend for this build, being able to kind of stay a bit further back and let the more close-range characters do their jobs, Fear is going to be really helpful, causing your targets to drop what they have in their hands, becoming fearful, so they have disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls. And fearful also makes them... they must run from the source of their fear as well and can't take any additional actions. So long story short, this will really help buff up your allies. I always have to kind of remind myself that when I make these builds, they are going to be part of a team. And I think even though we have a lot of concentration spells, like Darkness and Haste and all that, we can choose to, if we want to help our allies or be offensive ourselves. There's a lot of different ways you can approach combat with this build. Yes, you have to pick and choose your concentration, but I think it still works. Anyways, like I say, Fear, definitely picking that up. We also do get another Eldritch Invocation at this level, and for me, you have a few options here, but it makes sense to take Repelling Blast to be able to push enemies that are in close range away from you if you need to. But there are other really good things here. Mire the Mind for slow, Sign of Ill Omen for bestow curse, Beast Speech for talking to animals. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm going to go with Repelling Blast here, but feel free to choose whatever you like. At Warlock level 6, we're going to be getting our subclass feature, that being Entropic Ward. As a reaction, you can impose disadvantage on an attack roll against you. If the attack misses, you gain advantage on your next attack roll against your attacker for 1 turn. Getting advantage is always nice. It's going to help us land things like critical hits and the like, so I quite like having this here. As for our spells, we get to pick another one, and I would like Hunger of Hadar. It's another concentration spell, but it's going to give us a ton of battlefield control in a different way while allowing us to still be quite offensive. We create a big area on the battlefield in which any creature inside takes 2d6 cold damage. If they start their turn in the area, and if they end their turn in the area, they take 2d6 acid damage. But also they are blinded as well, so we get a little bit of darkness in there too. But be warned, we will take damage from this as well, so don't cast this on yourself. Perhaps cast it on, you know, a group of enemies instead, or in a choke point in a location. But also, the area is considered difficult terrain, so once an enemy is in there, it's going to be harder for them to get out. Overall, it just fits the build quite nicely. Opening up this black abyss that enemies struggle to get out of is quite nice. Let's keep going. At Warlock level 7, we're going to get access to level 4 spells, and of course, I want Evard's Black Tentacles. Like, we're a Cthulhu avatar, we need to be able to summon tentacles, like, come on, that's the whole point. Tentacles sprout from the ground, turning the area into difficult terrain, attacking and smothering creatures within, so creatures within will take 3d6 bludgeoning damage, they will have their movement speed halved, and... what's this? Sorry, I'm just reading the spell because there's an extra bit I didn't know about. Attack rolls against the affected entity have advantage, and while the entity's attack rolls entity's attack rolls and dex saves have disadvantage. I did not know that was a part of this spell. How did I not know that? That's so dumb of me. So yeah, it makes it even easier to hit enemies for both your allies and yourself. Obviously, you don't want your allies to be standing in the tentacles, but if they have ranged attacks like yourself, then it's going to go pretty well. Again, this build has a lot of different ways to basically make it harder for your enemies to hit you. Again, our main bread and butter combo is going to be Darkness, but all of this other stuff is so flavorful, and I just have to pick it up. We can also pick up another Eldritch Invocation, and we have a few more options here. There's the Book of Ancient Secrets, which would give you Ray of Sickness, Chromatic Orb, and Silence, that you cast these spells once per long rest and they don't cost a spell slot. I mean, this is okay. More spells is always nice, especially if they don't take spell slots, but once per long rest kind of sucks, and none of these really fit the build. So I'm actually going to be picking up one that I don't think I've used in a build video before, Dreadful Word, allowing us to cast Confusion with a Warlock spell slot, just basically getting it added to our list, allowing us to confuse a group of enemies, causing them to attack at random, wander around aimlessly, and occasionally skip turns in the stupor. There is a lot of sanity mechanics in Call of Cthulhu relating around it, like just losing complete control of your character, so I think Confusion makes sense, so I'm going to pick up Dreadful Word here. Takes the sanity effects that would normally affect just your own character and puts it onto enemies. That's kind of how this build's progression goes. Anyway, at Warlock level 8 we are going to be able to pick up another feat, and you have an option here. An ability score improvement to your Charisma or Constitution or Dexterity would not go amiss here for sure. However, I want to recommend something else as well. Spell Sniper. Spell Sniper is going to allow you to learn a cantrip, and the number you need to roll a critical hit with spells is reduced by 1. This effect can stack. Basically what this means is that you're going to be able to land critical hits with your Eldritch Blast much more frequently. We have lots of ways of obtaining advantage as well, so you're going to be getting critical hits with Eldritch Blast quite a lot. I've done crit fishing Eldritch Blast builds in the past, and they have been very, very strong, so I kind of wanted to bring it on here, because I like the idea of as we progress, our kind of powers get bigger and more uncontrollable, and end up doing more damage, so I feel like Spell Sniper is actually pretty nice to pick up at this level. We do also get a cantrip as well, and it's entirely up to you what you want to pick up, it really doesn't matter. I think Shocking Grasp, Ray of Frost, Fireball, any of these could work. Ray of Frost could be pretty good because it reduces the target's movement speed, so if you're attacking from far away, it'll make your enemies have a harder time reaching you. But Shocking Grasp might be good as a melee damage option for us if a target is close up and we can't get them to go away. It can be really helpful in Act 3 against things like the Steel Watchers, so I'm going to say maybe pick this one up. As for our spells, we do get another one at this level, and I'm not entirely sure what I want to grab here. We have a lot of options that could be really useful utility-wise, such as Counterspell. Hypnotic Pattern would allow you to kind of mess with enemies' minds in another way. Slow could be really, really good on this build if you wanted to, you know, be a bit more of a team support build as well, being able to slow targets, preventing them from being able to reach you so you can Eldritch Blast them from a distance, as well as allowing your enemies to be able to land attacks on them more often with their AC and Dexterity saves being reduced. And in fact, now that I've kind of put enough thought into it, I think slow is what I'm going to go for. And our final level is Warlock level 9. The 3-9 split is a little bit weird, and if you don't care about these level 9 features, you can go for a 4-8 split for that extra feat if you like, but I feel like our stats are in a pretty good position for what I'm trying to go for here. So I think that level 9 is a good place to stop, because it's going to give us a few things that I want. Namely, Dominate Person, which is going to allow us to literally control someone's mind, which is awesome. And if we replace a lower level spell that we don't really need anymore, I would honestly say Arms of Hadar probably isn't that useful now, we can also pick up Telekinesis, kind of getting the final form of the concept I was going for earlier with the Mage Hand Ledger Domain, allowing us to now pick up and throw things around now that our psychic influence has spread far outside of our own body and we've become way too powerful. And now we're starting to lose control. Things fly around the room. People, you know, start losing their minds in our presence. I think it's just great. I feel like it's getting Dominate Person and Telekinesis at this level is kind of like nice as a final capstone for the build, where our powers are now so strong that we influence everything. We also get some Eldritch Invocations at this point, and I'm going to be choosing a bit of a weird option here. Minions of Chaos. Now you may be thinking, what does Conjure Elemental have to do with this build? Well, the Earth Elemental is this hulking great mass of just sludge and mud, and it kind of looks like an eldritch horror in a weird way. This kind of vague form of a creature that just grunts and growls, and again, for a regular person, seeing that thing would be absolutely terrifying. So I actually think having a Conjure Elemental for the Earth Elemental for this build would work perfectly, allowing us to do this dark ritual to conjure up this eldritch horror from the depths of I don't know, Cthulhu's realm, somewhere deep in the cosmos. I don't know, I just really like that theming, and it's going to really help out this build. You have another body on the field that can take hits for you, because the Earth Elemental is very tanky. It has about 126 HP, I believe, And again, it can help do extra damage as well, take the heat off of you a bit, help out your allies. I think it's perfect for this build. And this and, you know, the other psychic spells that we get are the main reason I wanted to come to level 9. Trust me, especially for around the end of the game, it is a nice power boost for the build. And that is the build. Overall, we're going to be getting a ton out of this build. Tons of battlefield control, really strong offensive power of Eldritch Blasts, the ability to keep ourselves safe with Darkness, Arms of Hanar, the ability to support our allies with Crown of Madness, Fear, the ability to do, like, to be able to control people's minds with things like Dominate Person, throw things around with Telekinesis or our Mage Hand, and be able to escape from combat when we need to. I just think this build has so much interesting theming going on that it absolutely feels worth it. Now, let's get into the equipment here. We have a pretty standard affair here for a charisma-based caster, but let's get into this build's kind of overall strategy. Our main offensive thing is Eldritch Blast here, and again with Spell Sniper we were able to reduce the critical hit rate to being able to do it on to be able to launch a critical hit on a 19 or higher. So let's continue that trend and go even further. With the Knife of the Undermountain King, again we can kind of just keep this in our main hand, not really have to use it, and in my opinion it kind of looks like a bit of a ritual dagger weapon with maybe like a bit of blood on the end. So I feel like if this guy's carrying around like a cultish ritual dagger, it makes total sense. So I kind of like having it on this build, but the main reason that we have it is it reduces the number we need to roll a critical hit while attacking by 1. This effect can stack, so between this and Spell Sniper, we now roll critical hits on an 18 or higher, and when we roll 2 damage or less, we re-roll the dice, taking the highest result. This also counts for our Eldritch Blast, not just attacks made with this weapon, so just by having this in our hand, our Eldritch Blast is now extremely strong. Also, Shadow Blade, we have advantage on attack rolls against lightly or heavily obscured creatures while using this blade. If someone is in our cloud of darkness with us, we have advantage to hit them, which means even more critical hits. It's also a +2 weapon, and again, if we have advantage to hit because they're in darkness or whatever, we can still get attacks off with this weapon, but it's not as important. I've also, for our ranged weapon, this is an Act 3 option that you're just going to pick up. There's no other ranged weapons for this build. Again, we're using Eldritch Blast, and we're not going to be using this as a weapon. We're not proficient in it, but you can pick this up in Act 3, and it also reduces our critical hit rate while attacking by 1. So now I believe between Spell Sniper, the Knife of the Undermountain King, and this, we now roll a critical hit on a 17 or higher. That's insane, especially when Eldritch Blast is firing off 3 rays per attack. That's 3 chances to critical hit. That's a lot of damage. Now, let's get into the rest of our equipment. Of course, as a charisma-based caster, the Birthright Hat makes perfect sense, giving us a +2 charisma, rounding it out to a nice 20 for us, allowing our Eldritch Blast to do 1d10 plus 5 force damage. Again, that's with 3 rays, so times that amount by 3. Again, if we're hitting critical hits on some of these, it's a lot of damage. You all know how Eldritch Blaster builds work. But this is an Act 3 option. A decent option that you may even want to stick with over the Birthright that you can pick up earlier on is the Covert Cowl. While obscured, the number you need to roll a critical hit while attacking is reduced by 1. This effect can stack. So if you're wearing this, we now roll a critical hit on a 16 or higher. As long as we're obscured, well, as long as we have darkness up, we're always obscured. We're heavily obscured, so this will always be online as long as you're in darkness. Or if you're in an indoor area with a bit more shadows, this can also come into effect then as well. So it's kind of a choice between if you want to do a little bit more damage with your Eldritch Blast by having a higher charisma stat, or if you want a higher chance to critical hit. Either one will work. Definitely recommend picking this one up anyway, as you can get this before the Birthright Hat, regardless. Next up, since we're playing a Dark Urge, we might as well pick up the Deathstalker Mantle. Once per turn, whenever we kill an enemy, we shroud ourselves in primeval darkness and become invisible. Again, it's just another way to kind of keep enemies off us. We kill an enemy, we reposition while invisible, and we get advantage on our next attack. Makes perfect sense for this build, wanted to pick it up. Next up, we have the Elegant Studded Leather, allowing us to gain a +2 to initiative rolls, allowing us to get the jump on enemies, get set up with our darkness or whatever we need to do before they start attacking us, which is great. We have advantage on stealth checks, which is awesome. We want to be able to do that. And we get an extra usage of shield once per short rest, if it doesn't cost our spell slots. Overall, with the AC that we get from this as well, it's one of the best pieces of light armor in the game. It definitely makes sense. This is an Act 3 option, and probably some of you are thinking, why didn't you go for the Ball List armor? because we're not meant to actually be attacking with our weapons, so it didn't really make sense. I liked what we got from this more. But again, like I said, this is an Act 3 option, so there are some earlier game options for you. Act 1 has the Studded Leather +1, which just basically means it's just a pretty decent armor for the early game. And Act 2 has the Shade Clinger armor, while obscured, again, while we're in darkness. The wearer has advantage on saving throws, which could be really, really nice for us, actually, allowing us to maintain concentration a lot easier if we do end up getting hit. But again, it's not going to happen as much as you think it might do, even with our mediocre AC. 17 is not great. You can use a shield with this build, I just didn't like it aesthetically, but you absolutely could if you want. Next up, we move on to the gloves, and we have a few options here, but I will mention the elephant in the room first. Yes, picking up the Gloves of Dexterity in Act 1 to set your Dexterity to 18 would be extremely valuable for this build. More AC, you could use your melee weapon if you want to, all that other stuff. But I'm getting a bit bored of recommending the Gloves of Dex every single time, so I wanted to shake things up a little bit. Yes, it would make this build stronger overall if you use them, but I just want to do something different, man. Anyways, so here are a few options that you can pick up throughout the game, which I think would be quite interesting for this build. First up, the Daredevil Gloves. The wearer gains a +1 bonus to spell attack rolls. Pretty good. But the main thing here is now our ranged spell attacks are treated as melee spell attacks when we are adjacent to a hostile creature, and this effect can be toggled on and off. What this will do is, if an enemy does get up close and in our business, we don't suffer disadvantage when we use Eldritch Blast against them. So now Eldritch Blast can be used both melee and ranged. I did use this in the combat showcase that you will have seen at the start of the video, and, you know, you will at the end as well, and it does work out for us, but there are other options here that I think might be a bit stronger. Again, if you play this build right, you shouldn't have to worry about close range combat, so, you know, let's keep going. The other couple of options you could go for, one is the Arcane Braces. This will allow you to cast Mage Hand as a bonus action. This includes the more powerful Mage Hand we get from Arcane Trickster. Also, it allows you to cast Telekinesis as well, without using a spell slot. I would personally, this would probably be my personal choice, purely flavor-wise. It lets you get Telekinesis way earlier than you normally would be able to. Again, we get it at total level 12, whereas this you can get it closer to the end of Act 2, and it provides a nice kind of bit of synergy with our Arcane Trickster levels, so I think this would be my personal choice overall. But there is another option you could pick up in Act 3, that being the Spell Might Gloves. While casting a spell that requires an attack roll, you can take a -5 penalty to the roll to deal an additional 1d8 damage. I believe this works with Eldritch Blast. I probably should have tested it a bit more thoroughly, but this would be a way to give Eldritch Blast a bit more damage. Sorry for the weird cut there, I did just want to double check that the Spell Might Gloves work with Eldritch Blast because I forgot to test it, and yes they do, it's been confirmed. So yes, the Spell Might Gloves will give a bit more damage to our Eldritch Blast, with, you know, the penalty being that we take a -5 to the roll, but with our higher chance to roll a critical hit, we could get a lot of extra damage out of Eldritch Blast if we use this. So yeah, sorry. Sorry for my unprofessionalism, I really should test these things a bit more properly, but, you know, I just roll with the punches, and I'm trying to get a video recorded in a short amount of time, so, you know, I was going to make mistakes today. And finally, we just have the Evasive Shoes for our boots option. I didn't really want or care for anything else in the foot slot. There's nothing else we really need, so getting that little bit of a bump to our armor class is quite nice. Now, on to our accessories. We have the Spell Crux Amulet. I pretty much always recommend this if you take high levels in Warlock, because this is effectively a third Warlock spell slot once per long rest. Essentially, as a bonus action, we can use spell slot restoration to give ourselves another spell slot. So if you feel like you're in a pinch and you need that extra Warlock spell slot, you can always grab it even in the middle of combat, which is awesome. Next up is the Killer's Sweetheart. Whenever we kill a creature, your next attack roll will be a critical hit. You don't have to make your next attack roll a critical hit. This is a feature that you can bank and spend when you want to, whenever you launch an attack. This, combined with the Illithid Power Luck of the Far Realms, means we have 2 guaranteed critical hits at pretty much at all times, which is really, really nice. In addition to our already high chance to crit, it just means that we're going to be critting left, right, and center. And finally, After Death Do Us Part. This is a ring I had to include on this build for the theming, because in Call of Cthulhu, when your character reaches 0 sanity, or a low enough sanity where you completely lose control of them and actually have to make a new character, it's a really cool mechanic. Basically, it is a weird way of retiring a character, which means they can go crazy and potentially come back as a villain later in the campaign, and I kind of wanted to reflect it in some way here. I think this character being knocked out or going down in combat would essentially mean that what little hold they have on their sanity, what little bit of consciousness remains, falls away, and as such, after death do us part would kick in. Whenever the wearer is downed, they rise once more with half their hit points restored, but are gripped by shadow possession. And shadow possession means the affected entity is possessed by frenzied shadows and will attack the nearest creature. Its weapon attacks deal an additional 1 to 4 necrotic damage. So when we go down, our sanity reaches 0, and we get back up and just start going on a rampage, attacking things wildly, all that sort of thing. I'm not sure if there's a chance to come back from it, because we do get cursed. Somebody would have to use a remove curse spell on you, but I feel like that adds a little bit of fun narrative and roleplay stuff to this build, so I had to include it here. But you can put whatever you like in this slot. It's not essential to the build, but I really wanted to include it. And that is it for the equipment. Now let's move on to the Illithid Powers, and I believe this build is absolutely going to have the side quest of getting as many tadpoles as possible to unlock as many Illithid Powers as possible. I will include a link to the Illithid Powers wiki page if you want to look at more in detail to all of the abilities yourself, and there are some Illithid Powers that you can only get through side quests as well, and some bonuses and buffs that you can pick up along the way. I'll have a bunch of stuff linked in the description for those who want to look at it. Obviously there will be spoilers in those, but only as far as the Illithid Power stuff is concerned. There's not too many story spoilers in there, so you should be fine, but for the sake of this video, I'll just talk about some of the powers and I'll leave that extra stuff out. Some that I would absolutely want to focus on: Psionic Overload, adding an additional 1d4 psychic damage to our Eldritch Blasts, but in exchange we take 1d4 psychic damage each turn. Yikes. But you know, it's basically just like our mind going into overdrive, allowing us to deal more damage at a cost to ourselves. It's pretty damn fitting. Mind Blast, a massive, big psychic blast that can stun enemies. Absolutely. We want that. Absorb Intellect, allowing us to stupefy our enemies and heal from it. Definitely fits. Fracture Psyche, invade a target's mind and reduce their armor class by 1. Pretty cool. Force Tunnel, pushing enemies away. Concentrated Blast, allowing us to drop concentration to do a massive dollop of psychic damage, and if we attack another concentrating foe, we also heal from it. Displace a Beast Shape, allowing us to become an Eldritch monster ourselves, a weird panther with a bunch of tentacles and extra legs. Definitely weird. Allowing us to basically use a weird form of Wild Shape. We can teleport around the map, create illusory copies, mess with our enemies, so it gets its own pool of hit points, and it even gets extra attack all by itself as well. We don't need to have extra attack on this build, so if you want to go pure melee offensive, this is how you do it. Repulsor to push enemies away, Black Hole to pull enemies into a gravitational pull, Perilous Stakes to heal a creature when it attacks, but also makes it vulnerable to all damage. In anything but honor mode, you can cast that on a foe, making them vulnerable to all damage, which would basically mean they're dead, but in honor mode you cannot do that. Stage Fright, giving enemies disadvantage on attack rolls and make them take psychic damage if they miss. There's a ton of useful things here. Flying, Free Casting, which allows actions and bonus actions to be taken interchangeably. Shield of Thralls, allowing you to conjure a volatile shield around yourself or an ally, giving them temporary hit points. If this temporary hit points are lost due to incoming damage, the shield bursts, possibly stunning nearby foes. Very nice little bit of hit there. And Transfuse Health, allowing you to sacrifice your remaining hit points to heal a target for the same amount. A ton of utility here, but there's also the reaction-based stuff. I just bumped my mic, apologies. So let's get into that. We have Charm, allowing you to charm an enemy that attacks you, preventing them from attacking you until the next turn. It's used as a reaction. Sonic Backlash, allowing you to deal a d4 damage for every level of a spell that's being cast by a spellcaster. So they cast a spell, say it's level 3, you do 3d4 of psychic damage to them, which is pretty nice. And Psychic Dominance, which is essentially Counterspell. When an enemy within 80 meters targets you with a spell of a level that is lower or equal to your proficiency bonus, use your reaction to nullify the spell. So yeah, Counterspell on this build, which is awesome, as a reaction that has no other resource cost. Obviously we have Shield and Sneak Attack and all that good stuff. We have Entropic Ward. So yeah, those are the main things. Luck of the Far Realms is also here, I mentioned it earlier, allowing you to make a successful attack roll a critical hit whenever you like, but you can only do it once per long rest. So we have a ton of really interesting and powerful abilities here that augment our already existing things. Haste plus Displace a Beast form would go absolutely crazy. Darkness, and again, when you displace a beast as well, you retain all of your concentration, same as Wild Shape. And again, if you went with the Thief instead of Arcane Rogue, you would get 2 bonus actions while being a displace a beast, which would be insane. And remember to pick up the Zephysk power that lets you use all of your stuff as a bonus action. Again, if you want to get the most out of this build, really read the wiki page on Illithid Powers and figure out where all those tadpoles are and when to pick up these bonuses, because trust me, it'll make the build a lot stronger. And that is it. I think this is... I know I've made Illithid builds in the past. My Shadow Thrall, one of my more popular videos, was probably one of the better uses of this, but I really, really like this build thematically as well, as it just does quite a lot. You'll see in the combat footage at the top, I went for a different encounter this time, some ballist assassins that are in the sewers rather than a Steel Watcher, just to shake things up a bit and give a bit of a different perspective. And as you can see, it did not go well at the very start. We almost died pretty much immediately. Again, this build needs a rounder setup and definitely works better when you have allies. But as you can see, once we got that darkness cloud up and we're able to start, you know, fighting back, it was game over. We were able to Eldritch Blast, we were able to control our enemies with, you know, stunning them with Mind Blast, we were able to summon our Earth Elemental to be able to take a bunch of hits and do damage for us, and then when we wanted to get really into the combat, we wild-shaped into a Displacer Beast and went to town. This build will have a lot of versatility as you go, just remember to actually utilize your teammates, and the biggest difference here is you'll see this build's action economy was a bit bad, but that's because, unfortunately, I can't get the Zephysk ability to use Illithid Powers as a bonus action with the way I have things set up. But if you have that, you think every turn where we had a bonus action available that wasn't being used, we could have used an Illithid Power, which would have made this build just skyrocket in its utility. So, and again, we have all these extra spells that I didn't take advantage of. I mainly just showed off the bread and butter combo here. There is so much that this build can do. And again, all my builds are tested on Tactician, so you can see a relative scale of power there. And even in a dire situation, this build was able to succeed pretty wholeheartedly. So yeah, I mean, I'm quite happy with this build. It's probably not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I really did kind of want to start introducing Call of Cthulhu to this channel, because I would like to do stuff with it in the future. I have a really big project in mind that I might try and get done over the course of a month or so, and just see if I can do it, but it may or may not happen. It would be a lot of effort, but I would quite like to see it done if I can. I won't say what it is, so I'm not making any promises, but I would quite like to give it a shot. As for end of video stuff, I mean, after my week-long break and the channel kind of taking a dip, it seems like it's gone back to normal as far as all the statistics stuff goes, and I think my more frequent upload schedule is going to be helping out a little bit as well. Again, you guys are getting bonus Sunday videos now, and I'm trying to record a massive backlog of videos so that if I do have to take time off for whatever reason, this doesn't happen again. Again, I'm really trying to get on that grind a little bit and work a bit harder on these videos, and I think it's actually going quite nicely. Like I said, we have the Discord server now. I mean, this build I think actually was kind of a build request from a while back, kind of to make a build based on Call of Cthulhu, so I'm glad I was finally able to do it. As well as, if you want to make a build request, head over to the Discord. There is a build request channel if you want to post your requests there, so that I can have a look at them and potentially do them. There is a request for an interesting druid build that makes use of the Illithid Powers that I'm going to do eventually. I just didn't want to do it so close to the Howson build because they're kind of similar in concept, so I wanted to leave it for now. But I did want to do an Illithid build, and as such, I think this one works out quite nicely. Yeah, I mean, I think that's basically it. I'm not sure if there's anything else I want to say. Today is a Sunday as I'm recording this. I am going to be a bit busy for the rest of the day, so there was no live stream this weekend, but you are going to be getting a bonus video, I guess, on the Sunday, but this is coming out on the Monday, so it doesn't really matter. I would be interested to see how that Sunday video went. It's another D&D build, so, you know, I'm kind of interested. Again, these builds are being recorded and uploaded out of order and such, so the timeline's a bit of a mess. But yeah, I think that is going to do it for me overall. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.